Welcome to the American Institute of Architects Kansas City Chapter's Legends and Leaders program. This series highlights AIA architects and others that have helped shape our community, lead the AIA, and mentor a new generation of designers. Vicki Noteis is an architect and urban planner in Kansas City with over 35 years of experience in multiple aspects of the profession. Vicki served as Assistant City Manager and Director of Planning and Development for Kansas City, Missouri. Under her direction, the city completed the first comprehensive master plan since 1947, the Focus Kansas City Plan. Focus received the APA National Award for Excellence for the Best City Plan in 1997. She has received the Best City Administrator Award from the local chapter of the ASPA, the Distinguished Service Award from AIA Missouri, and was named an Alumni Fellow of the College of Architecture and Design at Kansas State University. She has served as president of the AIA Kansas City and chair of the Architectural Division of the Missouri Licensing Board for Architects, Engineers, and Land Surveyors. Vicki served 5 years on the Kansas City, Missouri City Planning Commission. Vicki is currently president of the Board of Historic Kansas City Foundation and serves on the board of the Citizens Association and the Kansas City Design Center. She is president of Collins Noteis and Associates, a consulting firm that provides urban and community planning services for both private and public sector clients. CNA has developed unique experience in helping communities find successful solutions when confronted with an overlapping complications of planning, urban design, transportation, public policy, and development realities. Projects include comprehensive plans for cities, transit planning, corridor plans, and assisting multiple city councils, planning commissions, and nonprofit organizations in the Midwest. Her varied career experiences includes design, preservation, adaptive reuse, marketing, and urban planning. Vicki serves as an adjunct faculty member in the Architecture and Urban Planning Department at UMKC and frequently lectures on Kansas City history and the development patterns. She's a graduate of Kansas State University. Let's meet Vicki.
We're so happy that you're able to come and talk with us about your career and the things that you've done. It's been a long and varied career, and I've been happy to see a lot of it. So let's start with why you became an architect in the first place. What got you interested?
I think what got me interested was, as a kid with no background, no family. I come from a construction family, union family. Nobody knew what an architect was or what they did. But I got interested in floor plans through a quirky way at the dentist office, pamphlets. And so, but actually what I did, I started drawing out floor plans for years. My mom saved them. There's like notebooks of them. And I don't really know where that came from, but there was no other real connection until I got into high school, and I wanted to take drafting, which wasn't open to girls at the time, long time ago. So we had to kind of fight our way into that. And actually I had a really great drafting teacher. I was the only girl in the class for 4 years. He let me do whatever I wanted to do and helped me with all kinds of other stuff that spatially was helpful, so that when I got to K-State in architecture, also the only girl in most of my classes, I felt more comfortable with the equipment and understanding how to use, what different kinds of vellum and all that was, and pen and ink. And so I felt more comfortable with that because it was intimidating for me. I went to K-State because, Kansas had a reciprocal agreement with students from Missouri. So a lot of Missouri kids, a lot of St. Louis kids were at K-State and KU. And so the times I got frustrated and came home and said, I don't want to do this anymore, I hate this, the answer was, okay, well then I guess you'll be going to MU next. So get on the bus, go back to school, do it some more. Moved back to Kansas City when I graduated, which was in the middle of a huge recession. There wasn't any work anywhere. And I interviewed a lot of places in Kansas City who frankly just said, we don't hire women, period. Some other funny stories that go with that, but basically wasn't getting very far. I had a great portfolio. Most of them didn't even look at that. So I was back up at K-State with a lecture, and Charles McAfee, who's a black architect in main office in Wichita. A lot of design awards, great guy, had an office in Kansas City, and he was speaking, so I just went up to him after and said, I really enjoyed your talk and blah, blah, blah. And he said, where do you work? And I said, nowhere now. I said, okay, come to work for me. When I worked for McAfee, that put me in a whole other world that's been really helpful to me. Our office was at 18th and Vine, basically 18th and Paseo, and for a while our office was in the Black Economic Union. So I met all of the major players and leaders in the Black community early on. And so I left to go to work for what was then PBNA, Patty Berkebile Nelson and Associates. Bill Love was already gone, and worked there for several years. And I was able to continue on the preservation track for a while. The first project, I think, was actually the 4th terminal for the Kansas City Airport, which was, of course, never built. But
Well, in fact, we worked together on some of the Kansas City, Missouri School District work, and you had started there with HNTV, but then
prime on the whole, the DSEG suit for Kansas City, Missouri Public Schools was a $500 million capital campaign to bring the schools up to par and try to get them equal to suburban schools in terms of their physical status, et cetera, the roofs. So Jerry Jaramillo and Jerry was a planner at HNTB, took the contract separately with HNTB and J.E. Dunn to put together a program for how you were going to site that many schools, and especially additions in existing neighborhoods in the urban core of the city, in not to mention 5 years, but to work with the community to do that. So we had a very small team of people. It was a very fun group of people who worked on that part. And that's when I started getting into the planning aspect of things, because frankly, I think the impact was so much bigger that we made a huge difference on that project for neighborhoods, for all these kids. There were 50,000 kids in the school district at the time. And, we could really use the processes that you learn in architecture with looking at, a basic program and some alternatives and figuring out which one's the best one with your client and moving on and watching it get built. So if we could have taken the worst case scenario when we looked at alternatives was to have to buy up 2,200 houses out of the urban core where the people you're trying to help with the schools. And the way we did it, we looked for vacant land and other kinds of opportunities. So we ended up only having to buy 200 out of that whole 5 years, 60 schools. And so that was a huge positive impact that we developed on our team and worked really hard to make that happen.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as disruptive as it could have been.
Yeah.
When I went to work for Charles McAfee, I'm in my 3-year internship or apprenticeship or whatever we called it back then. And he's the one who told me that I ought to join AIA. Of course, I didn't know anybody. And so I thought, well, okay. So he sent me to Clarence Kivett and said to Mr. Kivett, would you talk with her and help her do this? Because I think this would help her a lot. And frankly, it would help AIA a lot. So I did. I went and talked to Mr. Kivett, and he was wonderful. I was so used to people in the profession either just being so condescending or so out and out disrespectful that it was just like a breath of fresh air. I mean, Charles was great, and working with him was an anomaly, I figured out. But Mr. Kivett was really wonderful. So we had a great talk. He sort of helped recommend me for membership, or however we did it back then, because he had frankly had some trouble. He was Jewish, and back in his early practice, there were issues related to that. So everybody evolves at some pace. But anyway, I did get involved, and at the time, Linda Young was our executive director, who did so much for women members, and she did so much for every member. But frankly, I don't know what we all would have done without her. She was very skillful and very subtle and knew how to work with all the big guys, big firms, big partners, so that we could make our way and find our place. And so, and then, like everybody else, work yourself to death on committees. But I always ended up on the political and legislative committee because nobody else was very interested and they didn't know what they were doing. So from my other political experience, I could bring a lot to that table, which is how I got involved in Missouri AIA, which was almost all lobbying and stuff at the state level. And then I think on design awards and some other stuff, obviously. But Linda encouraged me to run for the board when we had a vacancy on the board. Somebody who was elected director and with 3 years left, I think, had to move. So we had an election to fill that. So that's how I ended up on the board. First woman on the board, I think. That was a great experience. It wasn't always positive, but a bunch of us in our age bracket, I will say, made a lot of difference, I think, in how the AIA worked internally. Frank and Kirk Gastinger and I and Dan Musser, we all worked hard others, Becky, to change the way we selected officers and the way we got other people involved. And it was a good support network once you got inside there. And then I was off the board for a long time, then asked to run for a regular director's opening, and then was elected president, I think, and president-elect in 95, I think, and president in 96. When I moved back to Kansas City, there were only 3 women practicing, and that included me, and 2 older people, and then Jane, so really 3 by that time. They were older who had stayed home and raised kids and then came back into the profession, which was even harder than what I was trying to do. Eventually, I think I contributed to AIA and things that have changed since then. And, we always said, you and I have worked on women in architecture projects for a long time, but we always said if you ever got 50% of the profession women, it would change everything. And now it is, and it did. And we were right. And it's made a huge positive difference. The one thing that I think AIA and the whole architectural profession has not come along on is minority participation.
You were at HMTB and working with the school district, and then Jerry Jaramillo, you got involved in public sector because you got into the planning commission. And so why don't you tell a little bit about the project, that process and the projects you worked on?
I was appointed to the Kansas City Planning Commission during that time when we were working on the school district. And the Planning Commission had always had an unwritten rule in Kansas City that an architect would be seated on there. You had to live in Kansas City, Missouri, but Tom Nelson had been on for a long time. Kite Singleton had been on for a long time before that. Bob Clayball was on for a little while. And so when Tom went off, there was basically a vacancy that was vacant for a while. But anyway, I was appointed by Mayor Berkeley for the Plan Commission. And so that was my first, I guess the public sector work with the district was my first experience with working with elected officials and boards and commissions and courts, et cetera. But the Plan Commission was really about, the quality of development in your city. And it's a powerful position to be appointed to. And I was on there, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years. But the architects in Kansas City that served on any commission, Kite and Tom and I and Bob and some others, we got together periodically so we could at least strategize about how to get some things done from wherever we were serving, which was really helpful. And they were all really, really great mentors for me. Bob Berkebile also, to help me, try to be effective with what I did. And Kite and I have worked together for years on transit and all those kinds of issues. And so the problem was the city, one of Kansas City's issues is we just spread our amenities out too far because we're so big. We're like 320 square miles. We're the 11th largest geographic city in the country, and there's only 500,000 people to pay for all that. So for a long time, everybody thought, well, that's great. Let's put the airport way up here and the stadium's way over here, and let's spread all the performing arts stuff out all over the place, because it often went to people depending on who owned the land. I mean, they were big, important political decisions, but we were spreading everything out so far that we were losing the core, the downtown core. And the city was making decisions about big things, convention hotels, et cetera, not based on the site, but based on which developer they liked best. So finally, the Plan Commission, we were, every meeting, we were saying, look, we need to have a strategy. You can't keep doing this. This is just not going to be healthy in the long run. It's not sustainable, et cetera. And so we talked the city into saying, okay, we'll do a new comprehensive plan. They hadn't done a master plan since 1947. Everybody else. Mm-hmm. So when John Laney retired as planning director and Bob Collins was named planning director, he came to me and said, why don't you just come and work here and we'll do the master plan out of the city that way. And I thought, well, that'd be weird. And everybody I knew, all the architects I hung around with, were, you're going to do what? Why would you do that? But to me, I didn't really ever care where I worked, if it was fun, if it was going to be a great experience, if I'd have some control or could help develop it the way I wanted to, then that was okay with me. So I did. I jumped around a lot. But I said, okay, I had to resign from the Plan Commission to do that. And I said, if you get some money, then okay, I'll do it. So he finds $50,000 in the budget, which is nothing back then. It's really nothing now. And said, okay, let's get started. So that was I went over in 1990, I think. It's kind of an interesting perspective on a whole lot of things. I just ended up over there in a window with some really, really great people and some great leadership and great people on the council as well, for like 3 councils and 3 or 4 city managers, where we got a lot done. So, I mean, it's a whole nother conversation about how we got the focus plan done, but that was the strategic and master plan that took 5 years to do. We had a break in the middle because everybody had to go work on empowerment zones for the Clinton administration. But there were probably 15,000 people involved, not just come to a meeting, gripe, and go away. I mean, they were consistently involved, and we came up with ways for them to stay consistently involved. So the architects all had a perspective group that they worked on, that they contributed with, and we mixed those up later to look at how we were going to deal with urban design and public investment and all kinds of things like that. And so we ended up, it got approved unanimously. We won the AP, American Planning Association's National Plan for Best City Plan in '99, and all kinds of other awards. And
Vicki, I'm wondering, if you're speaking to new architects, young architects, people early in their career, what advice do you give them now?
My advice to them is to get as much experience as they possibly can soak up and outside their firm. You know, you can get constricted when you first start out in architecture. They want to beat you up a little bit before you get to do anything. But to hang in there and be assertive about it. And if you're working on things that aren't that close to your heart or whatever, that you do have to go through a process of learning about stuff that isn't the most important to you. But you can fill that in with other stuff you do. You can join organizations. You can offer to be on a board or a commission or to work for a million different services that people need help with. And that's, it was by doing that I was able to blend that in with my career, because nobody was paying much attention to me early on in my career until I found somebody who just said, good, go do this. You're okay. Go out and manage this entire project by yourself when you're 22. It's okay. But I think, and I've told most, and you know, everything's changed so much technologically that I think it's evened things out a lot. You know, I miss people not being able to sketch or draw anymore, but if that wasn't your forte, you know, that was kind of a drawback. But, you know, stuff is much more equalized now. And I just think that, you know, it's a great profession. To me, it's broader than a traditional definition of it. And I've benefited from that, and I've always thought other people would too. But my advice is just soak up as much experience from as many people as you can, and don't be afraid to ask them. You know, don't be afraid to ask for more, to do more, to ask them for their opinions and their experience to help, because most people will always help you if you're asking for advice. You know, not necessarily asking for a job, but just asking for advice. And I think whatever experience you get is valuable, and you'll figure out what you like and don't like, and you will gradually, in my case, you know, it seemed to go like every 7 years. It was kind of like clockwork. I changed into something else. But you have to kind of roll with the punches and what the market is and what the profession is like. But it's so much more welcoming now than it used to be, that they don't have to fight through that barrier, and that's really a positive thing. And I'm glad that all of us that hung in there could do that to help make it a little bit easier for the rest of them.
Vicki, that was some wonderful words. Thank you so much. I think you've given us a great interview, and I appreciate your time here today so much.
It's good.